What up, dude bros? I'm Frank. This is a video review of the Woozi. The Woozi is a fully automatic, magazine-fed blaster that fires exclusively half-length darts. It is almost entirely 3D printed, and this model has an insane rate of fire. This blaster is so much fun to play with, bros. So, let's get into it. External overview of the Woozi, starting up at the front. There's no in-strike barrel lug. Above that are the iron sights, which are 3D printed along with almost all of this blaster. And there's also a tack rail. This is not an in-strike rail, but if you wanted to put an airsoft attachment, you totally could. Down right here, we have the selector switch. The select fire option is an add-on. Not all Woozis come with this. With the select fire option, you're able to choose from semi-auto, which fires 1 dart at a time, 3-round burst, which shoots 3, and fully automatic, which shoots out a laser beam of foam with this insanely fast rate of fire. They have different rate of fire versions available, and I asked them to send me the fastest one, and they did, and it's ridiculously fast. They advertise 50 rounds per second. I can't count that fast, but I believe them. The location of the selector switch is a little weird, but you can use your firing index finger like that to move it around. The high position is semi, the middle position is 3-round burst, and then the lower position is full auto. I had some lag and response issues with the semi-auto, but the burst fire and the full auto work just fine. At first glance, you might think that's a really weird place for a selector switch, and I totally agree with you, but after training with it a little bit, it actually makes sense, and it's very easy to use. It took me a little while to get used to it, but now that I have adjusted to it, it works very well. Moving back to the trigger, this trigger is the rev trigger and the firing trigger all in one. There's no separate rev switch like on a Strife. So you're able to halfway pull the trigger in order to start revving up the motors, then you finish the trigger pull in order to start firing. And with this blaster, I do recommend you pre-rev. You can slap on the trigger to fire, but the performance is pretty bad. You need to give the motors like half a second of pre-rev to get best performance. Moving on, over here we have the magazine release right here. To activate this, you push the lever upward, which is a little weird. It feels more like a slide stop to me than a mag release, but it actually works. The mag release, just like the selector switch, right when I picked it up, I was like, that's weird, and I just judged it. After I reloaded a few dozen times, I understand why it's done this way, and it works. And the mag well is nice and loose, so when you hit the magazine release, it drops out purely with gravity. And to the magazines themselves, the Woozi is compatible with worker Talon mags. I tried it with all my other half-length magazines and nothing else worked. That's not a big deal to me because the worker Talon mags are my favorite half-length magazines. They work really well. They're reasonably priced. It's just a solid magazine overall. And these are standard Talon magazines, not the angled ones from the worker Phoenix, which I think is a great move. This blaster would really complement a spring primary that uses the same magazines. So you can gear up and just have one type of magazines for your spring primary and your flywheel backup. However, having the straight magazine comes at the cost of having a vertical grip, which is kind of weird. This grip is perpendicular to the barrel. It is not angled at all. So ergonomically, the blaster holds much differently in the hand because of the grip angle. Now to the grip itself. It's smooth, ergonomic, filleted. It's a comfortable grip to hold. However, it's not a super thick, fat grip like on the rival Apollo. This is slightly longer than average, but it's a very manageable grip. I think this will be comfortable for most hand sizes. The sizing, the smoothness, all of that in the grip is great. The grip angle is what's going to annoy most people, if anything. That is the grip moving up to the battery tray. To get to the battery, you use this thumb screw, but when that plate comes off, it reveals the battery area right here. This blaster runs on a 3S LiPo battery. Purchasing your first LiPo battery is a big deal. Please research the safety precautions you must take if purchasing and using a LiPo battery. But in here, it's wired up to an XT60 connector, and I think the battery tray is a pretty good size. However, the battery tray is not completely dummy-proof. If you shove your wiring in there, you can interfere with the feeding mechanism. As long as you're aware of it, it's not a big deal, but it's not dummy-proof, so you can't just act like a baboon, which is my default state, so I had to look out. Now moving back to the rear, I have attached the sling mount. They also have an in-strike stock attachment point that you can also screw in. I think that's the best of both worlds. If you want to run it as a primary, add a stock, nice stability, and then shoot it as like your main gun. Or for me, I want to run this on a 1-point sling, and this is a very low-profile sling mount. So I can wrap it up on a sling, throw it over my side, and that is a tiny little package that's not a whole lot of weight smacking into my hip. You don't have to disassemble the whole blaster to switch this out. You just take out the 4 screws and put this in, and then put the screws back in. It took like 3 minutes. It's pretty simple. So that is an external overview of the Woozi. Now I'll show you this blaster firing. Shooting Adventure Force half-length darts starting in full auto. Using the selector switch to go to semi-auto, I am going to pre-rev these shots. Now some tactical 3-round burst using the selector switch. Operating this blaster was so much fun. The rate of fire is ridiculously fast. But a few notes about my firing experience. First of all, the semi-auto mode was really annoying to use. The switch did not obey me. When I asked it to fire, sometimes it was like, no bro, don't want to, don't make me do stuff. So I had to keep tapping it until it eventually fired. It reminded me of using the rival Prometheus, the Nemesis, or the Perseus, any of the conveyor belt feeding systems in the rival series. Sometimes with the Prometheus you pull the trigger, nothing fires, so you just keep holding it, and then it eventually fires. Same thing with this one. In semi-auto mode, sometimes I'd press the trigger and the feeding mechanism would just herp derp and just not work. I'd keep pressing it and eventually it would go off, but like it was kind of annoying. And because of that, I really didn't use semi-auto that much. It's just not predictable. In semi-auto mode, firing one at a time, you need to know it's going to fire every time you pull the trigger. That sporadic firing, like on a rival Prometheus, is only reasonable when you're shooting out massive amounts of foam, not one at a time. That kind of annoyed me. The 3-round burst mode worked pretty well. However, sometimes it fired 4 darts, not 3. That might have something to do with this rate of fire because it's so fast, maybe the computer can't keep up with 50 rounds a second, I don't know. Firing 4 instead of 3 is not really a big deal, but it's worth noting. Then we get to full auto mode, where I really recommend this blaster just sit and stay. You don't really need the other options. Full auto is so much fun. It ran smooth, the rate of fire is insane, the trigger response is pretty reasonable. And like I said, you can slap the trigger and fire off just really fast, but I do recommend you pre-rev for like a fraction of a second. With a LiPo battery, it doesn't take long, but I really do recommend just a little bit of pre-rev. It really helps with performance. And if you don't want to spend extra money on a selector switch, it's not even a big deal. Just go full auto. You'll be fine with it, bro. I promise. You don't buy an Woozi to go semi-auto. That's kind of dumb. You buy an Woozi to go full auto. And my argument against using this blaster in semi-auto is partially the trigger response, that it just did not obey me, which I find annoying. You're a machine, damn it. Do what I tell you to do. But also the groupings weren't super tight, so I didn't have a lot of fun trying to like shoot what I was aiming at in semi-auto mode. When you go full auto and you point, one of those darts is going to hit your target and you just spray the target. But it's not quite accurate enough for me to really want to use semi-auto when you're operating at this velocity with the half-length darts. There are other more accurate options available if you're going for really precise fire. That's not what this one's built for. Spray and pray is the name of the game, and it does an exceptional job at it. The grip angle being super vertical did kind of bug me after a prolonged testing experience. However, I don't think it's that big a deal because I really don't think this would make for a practical primary. So as a secondary or as a specialty blaster, I don't think the grip angle's a big deal, but if you're looking for a primary to run all day for a prolonged experience, the grip angle might bug you. It's already bugging me. And lastly, I do have to disclose, when I got this blaster out of the box initially, it kept jamming on me. There was too much friction in the feeding mechanism and the firing arm stayed extended and it really jammed up. I had to take the mag out, get a screwdriver, and manually retract the feeding arm for it to reset. To fix this issue, I ended up disassembling it, opening up the feeding mechanism, and putting white lithium grease all up in there. So now it's nice and wet and sloppy, just the way I like it. It runs smooth. But after lubricating the feeding mechanism, the problem did not represent, so it's pretty much solved. But I do have to disclose it because I had to open up a pre-built blaster to fix it, which was kind of annoying. I think the problem was mostly caused by the feeding mechanism being almost entirely 3D printed. It's really cool that they 3D printed it, but 3D printed stuff is a little rougher. When the parts touch each other and rub around, it's not like injection molded, which is very smooth and slick. Again, squirted white lithium grease all up in there and the problem went away, so it's not that big a deal. Those are my firing notes. Now to the chrono results. Shooting Adventure Force half-length darts, 163 feet per second. With Dart Zone half-length darts, 165 feet per second, which is right where they advertised this model. I got the model with 2 sets of flywheels in here, which is advertised at 165 FPS. They also have a model with only 1 set of flywheels that has an advertised chrono of 130 feet per second. I haven't tested that unit though, that is their advertised chrono reading. But 165 is way over that 70 FPS par we can expect from normal Nerf blasters. That is the objective information I can provide on the Woozi. Now to my personal opinion. Overall, I love this blaster. It performs very well. It's extremely good at exactly what it's trying to be good at. Now, it's not built as a primary, and I don't intend to field it as a primary. I intend to attach a 1-point sling, leave it on my hip, and run like a Springer that's a little more accurate as my main blaster. Then if someone rushes me, I can whip this out on full auto and pretty much get a guaranteed kill under 40 feet. You'll mag dump into one guy, and you will almost guarantee guaranteed hit him, just going the amount of power. It's like a frozen rope of darts, like they're almost touching each other. When you see them, it looks like a continuous laser beam because the darts are so dang close together. The rate of fire is insane. So my overall opinion on the Woozi is really positive. It is pretty much the smallest blaster you could possibly make do what this blaster does. It's like purpose-built from the ground up to just be a tiny miniature little full auto death machine that you throw on a sling. If you don't want to run it on a sling, you could add a stock and run it as your main gun, but as I mentioned, without semi-auto being functional, it wouldn't be a very practical primary in my opinion. And in full auto, especially with the highest rate of fire, you mag dump so often, it really is like too fast a rate of fire. And that would be my biggest complaint about this blaster. Now, I did specifically ask Frontline Foam to send over the fastest one they had, and they did, and it's ridiculously fast, but it's honestly a little too fast. I feel like most of the time I'm wasting ammo because I don't want to shoot off the whole mag, but the whole mag gets dumped before I can even take my finger off the trigger. I'm not even exaggerating. Now, they do have different rate of fire options available: 5 darts a second, 8, 10, 16, 20, and 50 darts a second. But after recently reviewing the Worker Phoenix with an adjustable rate of fire, I can't help but wish the Woozi had an adjustable rate of fire. Because I love the 50 darts per second, but not all the time, not for every shot. So it would be really great if they could implement that adjustable rate of fire knob like on the Worker Phoenix into this unit. I would happily trade the selector switch because honestly, I didn't really use semi or burst that often. So it'd be really cool instead of a selector switch to have a little dial to move from 50 darts a second down to like 10. And 10 is still pretty quick. That's not slow at all, but compared to frozen ropes, like it is slower. But other than that complaint, the rate of fire is too good for me. I don't have any other real complaints about this blaster. Now to the question to buy or not to buy. First of all, if you're a stock class nerfer, don't even consider this one. It shoots too hard. I've said this before, this is totally in a different arena. If your friends are not shooting at 150 FPS along with you, it's not really fun. Everybody has to be shooting at near the same muzzle velocity. So this blaster is only recommended to outdoor nerfers firing at that 100 FPS range that are using half-length darts. But if that's you and you like the idea of having a slung secondary that's almost a guaranteed kill within 30 feet, definitely consider this blaster. It shoots hard, it runs well, and it's so small and compact. I don't think they could have made it any smaller. But again, if you're looking for a primary, I don't recommend this one. I don't think it would really be great for that application. I think a primary needs more controllable rate of fire so you're not blowing your whole load within the first 3 minutes of the match. And the shot-to-shot precision wasn't there compared to other half-length dart launchers on the market right now. Again, when you go brrr and mag dump on someone, you don't need super awesome precision. So as a primary, I don't really recommend this one. But where this blaster really shines and who I would really recommend it for is if you're running a spring primary using Talon mags and occasionally you get jumped or rushed when you're reloading or your mag's down or something like that. And if you just want to whip this out and blast someone, definitely consider this one. For that role specifically, to run slung in order to contrast with your primary, I can't think of a better blaster than this one. I think it's built from the ground up to do that job, and I think it does that job exceptionally well. So if that's you and you're looking for a full auto secondary, yes, definitely consider the Woozi. And because I just reviewed it, I know some of you guys are going to ask me to compare the Worker Phoenix and the Woozi, because they are pretty similar. But as you can see, the Woozi is way, way smaller than the Phoenix. Who I would recommend these to, if you're looking for more of a primary, I would recommend the Worker Phoenix over the Woozi. The grip angle would really just bug me if this was my main blaster, and the Worker Phoenix is bigger and a little more substantial. It would feel better to me as a primary than the Woozi. Also, the Worker Phoenix is injection molded plastic, which I just trust more. I would feel more comfortable throwing this around and abusing a little bit more than the 3D printed components. So if you're a little rougher on your gear, I think that goes to the Worker Phoenix over the Woozi. And lastly, I abused the Worker Phoenix and I didn't have any jams or hiccups at all. It just ran like a beauty. Compared to the Woozi, which did require me taking apart the blaster and re-lubricating the 3D printed components. Because it's 3D printed, I don't think the longevity is as strong as injection molded. So when it comes to that type of thing, I think that comes down to, are you mechanically inclined? Are you comfortable opening up a blaster? If you are not, if you're more like a Mac guy than a PC guy, buy the Phoenix. Nothing wrong with that. You care more about the experience. You don't care about how the blaster works. You just want it to go pew. If you're really fascinated by mechanics and you want to learn the blaster inside out, the Woozi is a really fun project to build. They sell it in kit form and assembled form if you want to assemble it on your own. But for me, if I'm running this as a slung secondary, I would choose the Woozi all day, every day. The mag compatibility is a big deal. It's easier to just use the same mags for your main gun and your slung secondary. The Worker Phoenix uses angled Talon magazines, and if this is your primary, that's not a big deal. But if you're using a separate blaster as your primary, it's convenient to have all of the magazines match. And the Worker Phoenix is much larger, so to have this bouncing around on your hip if you're gonna sling it all day, this would be more of a nuisance than this teeny tiny little Woozi. That's just a brief breakdown. They're very similar, but they're also very different blasters. So that was kind of a scrambled purchase recommendation, but hopefully I've laid out all the information you need to make an educated purchase decision on your own. Thank you very much to Frontline Foam for sending over this review unit for free. If you'd like to purchase a Woozi or check out more information on the blaster, check out Frontline Foam's website, link in the description box below. That concludes my video review of the Woozi. Thanks so much for watching, bros, and as always, stay tactical.